Welcome, everyone. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. Humbled by all the new and regular listeners. You know, my personality is not one of a Debbie Downer. I'm a very positive, supportive, lift you up, joking type of person. Yet the individual I'm going to speak of today is none of what I just described of myself. He's created more problems not only in Canada, but around the world by his complete lack of an IQ, his narcissistic personality, his entitlement syndrome, his inability to tell the truth, and complete disdain for the great citizens of Canada. He single-handedly created the largest level of hate, division, anarchy, group virtue signaling, pandering, tear Canada down to a Sharia law welfare state situation in Canada's 151-year history. And the turmoil he's causing Canada spills over to other countries. And the reason this comes back to one reason, the globalist agenda, for which this individual is the ultimate puppet for. Now, for those of you who may not yet have tuned in to past episodes, please go to my YouTube channel, So Not PC Podcast with Rob Adamus, or my website, www.sonotpcpodcast.com. And please share the two sites virally, as my goal is to grow the show around the world as quickly as possible for you, the listeners. I said from day one when the idea was hatched to create a show, this is and never will be about me. Now back to the Globalist Agenda video I introduced a few weeks ago, with who some of the main master puppeteers are, who want nothing more to do than just run the world. Globalist Agenda isn't a new thing. It's existed since the dawn of mankind, but didn't have the Globalist Agenda title until recent years. Oh, and for Justin Trudeau, Canada's Prime Minister, the main target of today's show, mankind is the proper word. It's a shortened version of humankind, you degenerate, virtue-signaling, uneducated dolt. No such word as peoplekind. The word he came up with during a February town hall in Edmonton, Alberta, where a young woman used the word mankind. Yeah, okay. Lord, I'm going to enjoy making sure this excuse for skin is gone for good in the next Canadian election. So, after each show, I contemplate what next week's topic should be, and when I meditated on this, the topic rang out like 1,000 bullhorns. Justin Trudeau. Two words that ignite Canadians in a way that no other individual has ever done in Canadian history. His very name creates an extensively long list of negatives which he alone has initiated and compounds every day. This is a so-called leader whose resume is filled with the following qualifications. Had to repeat grade 7, undergrad education courses, and teacher training. Couldn't get a job teaching French in 2 school districts, yet it's his native language. Lasted 2.5 years in a rich kid's private school, meaning a school that's paid to pass every student no matter how bad their grades are, before he, quote, had to leave in the middle of the year. Oh, poor baby. Dropped out of university 3 times. Formal job training. Part-time snowboarder, part-time bartender, part-time drama teacher, full-time degenerate and narcissist. Hates Canadians, yet cries for ISIS, other terrorists and illegal immigrants. Yes, go watch the thousands of factual videos out there with him and his amazingly low IQ spewing his hate for us and catering to Islamic ideologies and pedophile and child pornographer friends. Let me take a second to point out something key for my audience. A person is known by the company they keep. And when your closest friends and associates fall into the 2 categories of pedophiles, child pornographers, and Islam lovers, then let's take a serious look at who Justin Trudeau really is, shall we? Again, lover of Islam, but hater of Christians, Jews, conservatives, libertarians. And these are not the parties I'm talking about with those 2 titles, but the way people think and feel about not only politics, but life in general. Now, I'll list off many more Trudeau shortcomings for you via factual evidence, thus proving why this individual must no longer be Canada's PM and would be better off sent to a deserted island in the middle of some ocean with no means of transportation, food, or communication. Sound harsh? Not at all. If you're fully informed about who this entitled weird sock wearer is, and believe me, he'd do exactly the same, what I just told you, to 37 million Canadians if he had the opportunity to do so. Oh, and missed one thing. He's the son, perhaps not the real son, of former Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau, given much evidence to the contrary, and points to Fidel Castro, deceased former Cuban dictator, Prime Minister, and President of Cuba, as his biological father. However, for the sake of this particular broadcast, we'll say Pierre was his father. Now, Pierre and Castro were very close friends, as Pierre was actually known as a Marxist communist, not a conservative thinker by any means. He believed in controlling a country's population in a dictatorship mode, much in the same way Castro did to Cuba. Communism doesn't work, folks. The other word for it? Socialism, which is finding its way, unfortunately, into Canada as we speak. Now, what I find fitting with the Trudeau family is their exceptional history for being a family of Canadian haters. Pierre used to hold the distinction as the Prime Minister who hated Canada the most, and now is far superseded by his pseudo-son Justin in that title. Not a title a sane Canadian would care to hold. So there you go, Canada. The resume of how to become Canada's Prime Minister. So congratulations to all the Canadians who voted for this degenerate, and to George Soros for rigging the 2015 election in his and the Liberal Party's favor. Plenty of evidence mounting to show this happened, and guaranteed Soros will attempt the same rigging in the 2019 election. And if you don't believe me, here we go with my mantra. Do your own research. Okay, here's a remedy, Canada, for this. Get out and vote at the highest number of vote-eligible Canadians ever, and vote for the Conservative Party. Now, why did I say vote for them? Simple answer. In politics, there's no such thing as perfection, and never will be. You vote for the best option available based on a first and foremost always in Canada's favor in your decision making. And the Conservative Party happens to be the best option for that at this time. Liberal Party acts for themselves only. Worst government in the history of Canada, and that's a fact. If you don't believe it, then you're not mentally correct at this point. I have vitamins I'll send you to help you bring you to the same place. So, taking a deep breath. Oh yeah. There's such an incredibly long list of lies, scandals, and failures that Justin Trudeau has perpetrated on the great people of Canada. It's impossible to list them all in one episode for you. But I am going to list a number of them for you, the audience, and your connections. You need to be awakened to this. This is urgent. I stated his number one designation earlier in the broadcast, so you'll vote for a much better party in Canada's upcoming federal election. And when I say vote for a better party, again, I'm not talking the Liberals or the NDP, which is another communist party like the Liberals, who want bigger government, higher taxes, terrorist sympathizers? Ugh, really? Okay, and if anyone votes for Liberals, you deserve a straitjacket and permanent residency in the wingnut wing of your nearest hospital. Now, before I list off a couple dozen Trudeau lies and screw-ups for starters, I believe it's prudent for me to reiterate something I've stated numerous times in previous podcasts. The left-wing liberal media in Canada, and I'm speaking of the CBC, CTV, Global, and many newspapers and magazines who are funded by the Liberal Party and George Soros to provide, quote, positive news about Trudeau and the Liberal Party. Okay? They provide only lies and propaganda. Nothing, and I mean nothing that Trudeau decides on has any benefit to real Canadians, only to other countries, and panders to illegal immigrants, specific specialty groups, and ISIS terrorists in Canada. Did you hear what I just said? Today's show and others attempt to hammer home a plethora of very important points by repeating them. Why do I do that? Because repetition is required to help with memory retention. And in the world of politics, the corruption that Trudeau and the Liberal Party is perpetrating on Canadians is treasonous, despicable, and by the very definition of the Canadian Criminal Code, they should be charged and indicted for more offenses than they themselves can count. Does it sound like I have a personal vendetta against Trudeau and the Liberals? Absolutely not. I've never voted party specific, never had a real interest overall for politics, so no vendetta whatsoever. Yet when Trudeau hates Canadians the way he does, violates more codes and ethics than one person can possibly be afforded, and his cabinet ministers follow along with their devious smiles, there's only one solution to this. Get rid of the Liberal Party and Trudeau in the next election and indict every one of their corrupt asses, because the evidence of their corruption is overwhelming. And to back up what I've stated, here are a selection of lies and treasonous actions against the Canadian population, which are only starters. 1. Claims the budget will balance itself. What economics class didn't you attend, Trudeau? 2. The budget will have a small deficit. Incredibly higher deficits in 2.5 years in office, and the Liberals knew this would happen, so that means they lied. So-called refugee numbers, really illegal immigrants, at least 3 to 5 times higher than what's been reported by left-wing media. States in a video from 2010, Quebecers are better than all other Canadians. Huh? Goes to court against Canadian veterans, stating they're asking for too much. Ottawa has spent $40.5 million of our taxpayer dollars against veterans, then turns around and gives $33 million to the Afghanistan military. What? Afghanistan military? What happened to our veterans and their needs? Gives billions to Islamic countries. Yep, the top terrorist spending countries get our money. Tells Canadians they'll implement a carbon tax across Canada regardless of Canadians saying they don't want it because it's a gigantic fraud. So much for caring about our wishes. Oh, and this one I really love, among others. Hands $241 million of our money to the Clinton Foundation. The Clinton Foundation. To 2 of the most corrupt, evil people on the face of the planet. Just happens to also be related to George Soros. There's that name again. Anyway, Canada's debt now stands at $1.2 trillion. That's right, you didn't hear wrong. 1.2 trillion. Now, to give you an idea of what that looks like, you could wrap $1 bills, and of course in Canada, our case, loonies, around the earth 3,512 times with that debt amount. If you lay $1 bills on top of each other, they would make a pile 98,533 kilometers, or 61,226 miles high. That's a hell of a road. That's equivalent to 0.26 trips to the moon. And think about our population, 37 million. And we have a $1.2 trillion debt. Nobody else has that. So, I could go into a long, long list of things, from the Energy East debacle, the Kinder Morgan debacle, the Bombardier bailout, chased $80 billion of investment money away from Canada, which has led to thousands of jobs being eliminated, and tens of thousands of jobs that should have been created are not there now. Screws up the G7 summit and NAFTA, leaving Canada out in the cold, and he ticked off a number of countries and their leaders on top of it. And he's a groper of women. Gropergate. Yeah, and then ensures the women don't come forward and speak out about what he did. Oh, and the everyday one. If you disagree with him, he calls you a racist. Considering all sane people disagree with him, I guess we're all racist then. No, his ideology, words, and actions certainly identify him as the real racist. Now, I mentioned earlier what an Islam lover he is. Let me explain something to everyone. Islam is not a religion. It's an ideology. It's a death cult ideology. So take that non-existent word, Islamophobia, and eliminate it. And Trudeau, people kind too. That doesn't exist either. So, there you go. Just to name some of the atrocities, which unfortunately number in the hundreds, of what Trudeau and the Liberal Party have done to this country in less than 3 years. A damn disgrace to all demographics, from our children to our senior citizens. Worse yet is how their damage will affect our unborn children. No more Canada. No more Liberal Party. This happens every time that they've been in power. So get it already when you vote? There's an old saying, if you don't learn from the past, you're sure to repeat it. Think on that one. Now, the Liberal Party has always been a cancer on the Canadian landscape, and this particular Prime Minister and his ministers, dozens who were not born in Canada, have taken devastation to a level that is unconscionable. One has to ask the question why. I can only answer that one-word question in this way, whether you believe my answer or not. If one is to look at not only Canada but the world in the escalation of violence, hate, political correctness, exposure of mainstream media lies and propaganda, exposure to the long-hidden child sex trafficking and pedophile rings, including what's going on with the Catholic priests in Vatican City, the use of ISIS, MS-13 gangs, illegal immigrant migration, where at least 98% of those illegals are military-age men, not women and children, as the liberals, Democrats, or any left-wing propaganda machine tries to make you believe. The world is finally exposing good versus evil. Yet there are still too many people who go into denial, those who are completely ill-informed or lied to by mainstream media, and those who simply don't care about what's going on, thinking somehow their lives are immune from the ills of the world. Let me explain something to these folks. You're not immune. Stop denying. Get informed with truth, because the truth will set you free. Heard that one before? It's true. And the sooner you come to grips with a reality check, the quicker we people who still have a soul can create the collective fight against the globalist agenda and their minions like the Justin Trudeaus and liberal parties of the world. Canada was once a great country to live in. I don't recognize it anymore. When an ideology like Islam goes into a country to take over, that's an evil problem that must be eliminated immediately before it festers into a cancer that is incurable. I personally believe good beats evil, and it will. But it's a collective effort among believers and patriots who have a faith which is married with progressive actions against evil, in conjunction with God's plan. If you're not a part of this collective effort, you're with evil. And I can only pray you wake up and be part of the right team. Stop being a laid-back Canadian, as this is not a title you want on a resume. I thank you for listening in today. I'm humbled you took time with me to learn some valuable information. So now, what are you going to do with it? Till next week, stay learned, be inquisitive, take care of your mental, spiritual health, and financial well-being. Grow your faith, and may God bless you and your loved ones in all things. Good night.